We are talking about using storytelling to build your message. Hey love, you're listening to the Mums in Biz Show and I'm Nick Torrey. Every week I bring you the unvarnished version of what it means to be a mum running a brilliant business, what you need to be doing to get it to where you want it to be, and a healthy dose of how to get the heck out of your own way. Let's dive in. Ladies, and welcome to today's episode of the Mums in Biz Show. I'm Nick Tuerick and I own and run Nicole Tuerick Coaching. That is my business, and I work with professional mums just like you to help them grow businesses that they absolutely love. Today it's episode 18 and we are talking about using storytelling to build your message. It is so hard to know where to start when you're talking about copy. So writing copy, of course, is all of the words, anything to do with words that you write for your business to get your message out there to grow your business. And it is really quite challenging, and it's one of the things that, well, 2 points to make here. A, it's absolutely pivotal to your success because nailing your copy helps you stand out from the crowd, helps you stand out in terms of your message and really connect with your ideal client. It's so hard to do because there's so much noise in the marketing world today. But it is the thing that lets most of us down. It is a learned skill and we must practice doing it and just putting ourselves out there and noticing what works and changing it and doing more of the stuff that works and less of the stuff that doesn't, and you just get better with time. But there are some things that you can do to kind of fast track yourself a wee bit, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Make sure you do go back and grab the access to the training for 5 Focus Secrets. I spent a whole session on day 2 around your brand foundation, and this is so much more than what colors and what your logo looks like. Okay, the foundation to your messaging, your brand, is about you and really knowing who you are and what you stand for. And it's about setting in stone that business identity. Like, what is it? What is the reason that your business exists? What is the impact that you want to make? And how are you showing up in your business to bring that impact to life, to really take it further? And it becomes about how can your ideal client relate to you? Okay, so how are you bringing forward the best of yourself? How are you ensuring that you are really consistent in your message and what you put forward? And you could be talking about all sorts of things. Like I deliver training on a whole bunch of different topics related to being in business, primarily online business. But there is a foundational message that goes through everything that I have to say. And that is targeted for my ideal client, for you, for professional mums who want to get ahead in business, who want to make an impact, who want to do something different. And my message is about you being able to step up and be your most confident self. How can you start to be the CEO that your future business needs you to be right now? Because that's what it takes for you to be able to grow. And so we talk about confidence, we talk about what's holding you back, we talk about a whole bunch of mindset stuff that's really, really important to being able to succeed and grow. And that underpins all of my content, everything that I do. And everybody who has followed me for a wee while would see that theme threading through. That's what I want you to start thinking about as one of your focus areas. What is your core message? Because it becomes way less challenging to think about different things to say too. Like, who has trouble coming up with a content calendar? It can be a real struggle, but it's a lot easier if you know what that foundational message is, what you stand for. Okay, thinking about how you want to be described and what values you have in your business. What are your core values and how do you bring that all together? So grab the training link. So bit.ly link /5 Focus Secrets I delved into that in a whole bunch of detail, and you want to go and watch that. So today I'm talking then about the art of storytelling, because this is how you can start to bring all of that to life. You've got your foundation set, you know what you stand for. So how on earth do you connect with people through your message, through your copy? It's a really interesting problem, actually, because what we want to do with our copy and our messaging is we want to engage with people. We want to invoke their emotions. We want to really connect with them. We want them to connect with our message. We want them to understand what it is that is important for us and for them and how we can make a difference. Storytelling helps you make your message really relatable. It helps you make it something that your ideal client really wants to know more about. And here's the reason why it's so important. Our brains make connections in organic ways. This is why things like mind mapping work really well for some people, because the way that we build connections between different thoughts and topics and ideas is quite an organic process. You know, how often have you been listening to something and you have this like spark of inspiration that's in a completely unrelated space of your life, or, you know, it's something that you've been trying to work out and all of a sudden the idea comes to you when you're, I don't know, having a bath or listening to some music or doing something fairly mindless. Yeah, it's because of the way that your brain operates in terms of connecting ideas and thoughts. But we are taught to think and communicate in a linear fashion with logic, as in schooling systems, the way that we are taught to or the way that our teachers help us learn, the way that we are taught to learn, the way that we are taught to communicate. You know, English is a terribly structured language, especially in corporate. So if you've come from a corporate environment and most of you have some kind of professional background, we are particularly structured in a corporate environment. I studied science and then went and spent 20 years in corporate, 10 of which were, or more than 10, were with a Big Four consulting firm. And so we were really, you know, proper pronunciation, full sentence structure, logical presentation and ordering of ideas, having a distinct flow between the way that things were built up, very scientific process in terms of how a storyboard, we called it a story, but it wasn't, well, I suppose it was a story, but it was a very logical, linear story in terms of some of the things that we were presenting. And I've had to unlearn quite a lot of that to build my skills in storytelling. And you are probably the same. And so when we design our products and services, the things that you are selling within your business to make a difference for your ideal client, again, we do that logically. We do it with rational thought, with rational design, with linear design. You know, it's almost impossible to go straight from that to then writing copy about benefits and impact in a way that makes your ideal client want to connect with you. Okay, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. It just is when you're thinking about something in one particular way and it's really linear, and I know that these are the features of my product and I've worked down from this is the solution that I want to create for them. I know that they need these 5 things to help them get there and I'm going to deliver that in these different ways. Or you're building a product, a physical product, and you go through the logical design of that product. What's it going to look like? How's it going to perform? What are the ingredients that go into it, or the components or the parts? How am I going to pull that together? What is the logical structure, the sequential nature of how you produce the product? It's all very linear. And so you get to this point where you've got a thing that you want to go and put into the market, your widget, and then you start to try and talk about it, and it's so hard to get away from the features of it. Even when we start to talk benefits, we're still really linear about that. And that's what I want you to learn to get away from with the art of storytelling, is how can we, yes, linear and logical thought and structure and all that kind of stuff is really important. But when you're writing copy, that's about art form. So how can you then change the way that you're thinking? Does this make sense? Let me know if you've got any questions around it. So learning how to tell stories actually starts with nursery rhymes and fairy tales, because there is a basic structure to a story that draws us in. And in actual fact, this structure, I'll go through it with you in a moment, is exactly how 90% of the movies that we watch or shows that we watch are structured. They all follow this same sort of pattern. And so we get drawn in, and then we become emotionally invested in the outcome of whatever the problem is that gets created, and, working through with them the evolution of how they solve for that. And then you get to the happily ever after part. And in fact, some of us, if any of you are anything like me, feel pretty cheated when we get to the happily ever after part, because you go through all the drama and you get to the end, you're like, actually, I just want to sit with them in that happy place for a while. That's a sign of a story that's been well told, okay? And so you want to learn that in terms of how you're constructing your copy. I really advise that that you start at the back end. So before you write any words that you're going to put out there in social posts and all that kind of good stuff, blog posts, sales page copy, the messaging that you might use in a live video or things like that, I really recommend that before you do any of that, you do some longhand writing and start to get yourself back into that world of creating a story. And you can do that using a structure like this. Let me just pull that up so I can make sure I don't miss any key parts for you. The reason that this is really important is that if you don't have a story, then you are just another commodity. Okay, this is one of the things that will help set you apart from your competitors. And I think that if there are more than one business in the market doing what you do, then that's a sign that there is a market, and that's a good thing. I think that the competition keeps us strong. And I think that if we see competition as a threat, then that is a really risky perspective to come from. I think if you're really focused on your ideal client and connecting with them, your ideal client is going to be different to your competitor's ideal client, because the way that you tell stories will differ. So perfecting this is really, really important. And it's not just about standing out and getting noticed, okay? It's about building something that people care about and that they want to buy into. They can connect because they can see that you really understand where they are at. It's about framing your point of view. And so I talked before about your values, the value that you bring, what you stand for, and that core identity of your business. You can weave all of that through your storytelling, and people get a sense for who you are and what you stand for through that. It's really, really powerful technique. So, like I said again, it gets you beyond the utility and the functionality of the features, if you like, of your products and services, towards that, building loyalty and meaningful bonds with your customers, and them wanting to come back for more because they can connect so nicely with the way that you teach or tell stories or sell or whatever that might look like. So how do you construct a story? What does that even look like? Literally start with once upon a time. And especially if this is something that's really foreign to you, I actually recommend that you go back and read some fairy tales, because the structure I'm about to go through with you very clearly follows that outline. So they start with once upon a time. So once upon a time, there was a princess who lived in a castle, and she had a wonderful life. And every day she went for, I don't know, a walk in the woods or something like that. You would think I'd be able to remember a fairy tale, wouldn't you? I have two small girls, but no, I can't. And so this is what we call the balance. So it's the world that they're in. It's how things are existing for them now. This is what things look like every single day. There's a rhythm to life. There's a rhythm to what's happening in the situation you're trying to describe. And then one day something happens. This is what we call the unbalance. Okay, if you think of Snow White, for example, her once upon a time and her everyday, it wasn't that amazing. She wasn't, living an amazing life, but it was okay, and she was surviving and things were fine. And the unbalance was the day that she reached an age where her wicked stepmother's mirror identified her as being more beautiful than the wicked stepmother. And that was the unbalance. And so that created an issue. And so if I was to relate this to my story, for example, you guys I've done a whole episode on it. I'm not going to delve into it in too much detail, but I, had bubby number one, went back to work, learned all of that, got my confidence back, blah, 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 blah. Got pregnant with bubby number two. And after she was born, a whole bunch of stuff happened and I ended up with postnatal depression. And then one day, for me, that unbalance was that whole period of my life. And coming through that was the next bit, which is quest for resolution. So because of that, this happened. So in my story, that caused me to question the type of work I was doing. It caused me to question how I was showing up. It caused me to question the compromises that I was making, all of this kind of stiff stuff. It caused me to think about the impact that it had on my family when I wasn't doing great. And all of these kinds of things happened. And so in Snow White's story, she got taken to the forest by the huntsman and he was supposed to kill her, but he couldn't do that. And so he let her go and she found the 7 dwarves. And then in this quest for resolution piece, the wicked stepmother finds out that she's there and she tries to kill her. And, there's the bow thing. I think there's a lacing thing going on there and all sorts of stuff. And then finally the poison apple. And so she falls into a deep, deep sleep and the 7 dwarves build her a glass case because they can't bear to part with her. Until finally something happens. There's a tipping point. You are involved in the tipping point. You can draw them through this story, this once upon a time and their reality, and realizing the unbalance, realizing the things that are going wrong for them. They might be in the quest. That might be where your ideal client is at when you want to connect with them. And so they've tried all of these things. My ideal client, they might have tried a whole bunch of online courses. They might be constantly seeking guidance and advice and freebies, and they don't really know what to do next. And they're in this quest for resolution, and all they want is to be able to get to a point where they know what to do in their business. Okay. And then the last part of your story is the new balance. So until finally. Okay, so if we go back to our Snow White example, until finally a prince came through the forest one day and he saw Snow White asleep in the coffin and he fell in love with her immediately. I think the coffin broke, something happened there. Anyway, and he kisses her and the apple comes out of her mouth. There's multiple versions of this story. Anyway, she wakes up and, they fall in love and they live happily ever after. Until finally. This is the new balance. And so in my story, as I came through the other side of that really hard time, I realized exactly who I wanted to work with in my business. I wanted to work with professional mums. I wanted to empower women to be their best selves in their businesses and to achieve their dreams, and to do that by becoming more confident and by stepping into their amazing. And I realized the things that I loved about my corporate world were things I could leverage in my business. And so that was my new balance, until finally I realized these things. And ever since that day, that was the birth of Nick T Coaching and blah, 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 blah. Okay. So you can see you go through these steps. There's 4 main steps to a story. The balance. So this is your once upon a time, every day. These are the things that happen, kind of part of the story. Then you have your unbalance. And then one day something happened and that created turmoil in some way. There's a quest for resolution. So because of that, this happened. And because of that, this happened. And so this is that questing to resolve the situation. And then you've got the new balance. So until finally. So then something happens. Until finally something happens that resolves the issue and creates a new balance for them in their world. Okay, I'm going to put together a sheet for you on this so that you can, and so you can see with storytelling, if you sat down and wrote a longhand story about your ideal client and where they're at once you've resolved their issue for them. So write a story of what that looks like. That can then become your foundation to go backwards and start to write your copy. Make sure that your message is woven through there, because when you start with the story there, and I recommend longhand, like physically with a pen, because it engages your brain in a completely different way. It causes you to think differently about what you're writing. When we do it on a computer, we're more inclined to strive for perfection and start and stop constantly and go back and edit and all that kind of stuff. And when you're learning how to do storytelling, it's actually really powerful just to evolve it on the page and let it organically grow. Okay, and so then you're much more able to look at that and go, well, what are the benefits of where they're at in this new balance? What looks different for them in that world? And when you construct the benefits back from that direction rather than top down through your linear fashion of features, you come up with much more compelling words, because you can speak directly to the emotions that they're feeling in that new balance, in that resolved situation, and you can build that in. So finally, as you're constructing your story, you want to have a theme. If a story doesn't have a point, it doesn't hold our attention. And so learning the art of storytelling means that you're also going to focus on having something that makes that story compelling, okay? So it might be a single goal. It might be something wondrous or wonderful, or creating a feeling of wonder, having some drama in there, a deeper truth. You might be trying to help your ideal client realize something deeper. You might be trying to educate them on getting them from their surface benefits of their product, of their problem, not benefits, the surface problem that they're experiencing, to the real thing that's causing their issue, because that's where you want them to be focused. Maybe there's a promise in there somewhere, a promise of what they'll be able to achieve with their problem resolved, or a promise of what you can help them with, or what they will experience after your product or service. And sometimes including in there an element of making them work for it. So really knowing that there is effort that needs to be put in. You want them to know what it looks like to resolve that problem, okay? And so that's what storytelling is. It's an art form. It's something that I highly recommend you put the effort in to practice and just get better at it. And then build storytelling into your copy. You can use that structure in, 6 lines of a Facebook post just as easily as you can in long form copy on a sales page or a blog post. It forces you to be really deliberate about the words that you choose to use, and to think about how you sort of take your reader on a journey with every piece of copy that you write, and how you can get that connection with them in every single piece of copy that you write. And that's a wrap for today's episode. If you enjoy listening to the Mums in Biz show, I would love for you to leave us a review on iTunes, and be sure to post a snap of you enjoying the show on Instagram and tag me at nicole.tuerick. You can also join in the conversation with me in the Mums in Biz tribe on Facebook. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Mums in Biz show.